Hello everyone, welcome to This Is Why We Stand. My name is Joe Archino and I was inspired to make this series to convey the true meaning of the American flag and why that flag should always be honored and never disrespected. But today we begin season 2 of This Is Why We Stand, and it is a very important day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I think we all have our own unique way that we honor this incredible man who did so much for this country, and I think his words of wisdom are one of those things. We all kind of have our own different unique perspective, and we all kind of have his words that connect with us in a different way. And to me, his quote that sticks out to me so well and so well communicates and advances what my mission is to help our service members is this one. It is as follows: the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. And I think that quote right there, it bodes so well, and it's such a good reflection of our service members, because these are people obviously are in situations where their character, their courage, their strength is continually tested. And when you look at the people we've talked about on this series, I think that fits so well there as well. But we're going to talk about Henry Johnson on the first episode of season 2 of This Is Why We Stand. And Henry Johnson was a member of the famous Harlem Hellfighters, which was an all-black National Guard unit that was one of the first American forces that arrived in Europe during this World War I. And obviously, to give everyone a quick little timeline of World War I, in case you're not aware, World War I starts in Europe in 1914. The U.S. doesn't get involved into the war until the very end. And although the U.S. really only spent about a year and a half in the war did come to an end a year and a half after the U.S. got involved. So certainly the pressure that the U.S. put on the Germans and their allies in that instance is certainly one of the reasons why the war was able to come to an end when it did. But Henry Johnson obviously was one of those people, was an incredible soldier. He didn't win the Medal of Honor until long after his death, and certainly didn't get the recognition that he deserved at the time. And I think a big part of that is obviously the segregation of the United States military of the time and just the general attitude of the country. But certainly people like Martin Luther King were ones who worked so hard to make it so that today we never forget the memories of people like Henry Johnson. And I think the thing to me that always is so amazing about people like Henry Johnson, and I will get to his story, is that no matter what the circumstances were, he faced injustice, he faced inequality, but he never stopped fighting for his country, and he never stopped and gave up on his country. And I think that right there is really the true meaning of an American. It's not always going to be easy, there's not always going to be things that you agree with, but you never give up on your country and what it was founded upon. And certainly men like Martin Luther King understood that, and men like Henry Johnson understood that. But to go into his story a little bit, the African American units of the United States military in World War I were largely assigned to manual labor duties, not really any combat duties, until the French were desperate for them. The French really obviously were in this war from the get-go, and they sustained such heavy casualties in this war, as most did, that they were just desperate for reinforcements and for help. The U.S. agreed to allow certain African American units to basically help the French wherever they needed them, and then Henry Johnson's unit was one where they found themselves at the services of the French. And the French thought so highly of these units, they awarded them so many medals because of their service in the war. And I mean, I think you can kind of see in the nickname of his unit, the Harlem Hellfighters, that's a testament to how well they fought on the battlefield. But on May 14, 1918, Johnson and another soldier were on sentry duty when they came under attack by 20 Germans at about 2 a.m. Obviously, this is a situation where the two of them alone were basically thrown into a tumultuous situation right off the bat. You look at Johnson's ally, he was taken out of the fight right away. He was hurt right away. He couldn't stand or shoot. But Johnson, he held his ground with grenades and with his rifle. He was shot several times at the start of this instance, and he'd return fire. And I think this line right here, which I have outlined, is one of the things that to me is just such an incredible testament to Henry Johnson's bravery. He used his weapon until it jammed, and then he used that weapon as a club and fought with it hand to hand until it broke into pieces. After that, he saw that his ally, who had gone down earlier in the engagement, was being taken away by the Germans, and they were obviously going to try to take him away as a prisoner. But Johnson, all he had left at that point was a bolo knife. He had no more grenades. He had run out of his rifle ammo. And even if he wanted to use his rifle, he couldn't use it anymore because he had used it as a club and it had shattered into pieces. So he used that bolo knife and slashed his way through the Germans to save his ally. And I think obviously until finally American forces, reinforcements came to their side and they were able to drive the Germans back. But after that, and all the smoke of the engagement had cleared, they found that Johnson had caused 12 German casualties, and he suffered 21 wounds from gunfire and bayonets during that short engagement. And I think Henry Johnson's story, all of this happened very, very quickly. But in that quick instance, you kind of go back to the Martin Luther King quote where he talks about you are tested and your character is truly tested in moments of adversity and uncertainty. And certainly you see who Henry Johnson truly was in that instant. He would not allow his friend to be taken away prisoner. He used every resource at his disposal. He sustained 21 wounds, and that wasn't enough to put him down. And obviously, they think the saddest thing about it is Johnson really didn't get the recognition he deserved for this for a long, long time. He didn't get the Medal of Honor until 2015, and obviously this occurred in 1918, so you're talking a long time until Henry Johnson got the recognition he deserved, but he finally did, and I think today, it's not a name that you commonly hear, but that is a remarkable story there. I mean, make no mistake about it, you won't find a lot of instances like that. You know, I'm always looking for stories to make my series about what, and obviously I hope ultimately I'll be able to get to everyone who's ever served our country in some way. But I think Henry Johnson's is one of those ones where you just read it, and then you read it again, and you read it again, and you just sometimes, I think you're almost dumbfounded yourself when you read the stories of the bravery of some of these individuals, because they are unhuman in what they're able to get through. I mean, to get through an instance like this, when you use every resource you have, and you're able to get through it with all the injuries that he did, something that's just truly remarkable. But I think ultimately, the way that we remember people like Henry Johnson and Martin Luther King are people who obviously faced inequality, and it's something that was a problem for America in a long time, and it's something that many people still fight for to this day. But I think the thing that to me, it just shows how American these people were and why they really epitomize who we are and who we always have been, is the fact that they never ever gave up on their country. It would have been easy to. It would have been easy to with the amount of inequality and injustice that they faced, people like Martin Luther King and Henry Johnson. But they never gave up on their country, and then today we finally are able to keep their memory in mind forever. But Henry Johnson was a proud fighter of the United States military, didn't get the recognition he deserved then, but we can certainly make sure his memory is honored forever today. And by remembering him forever, we keep his memory and his name in mind, and it will live forever through the form of the American flag. But I want to thank everyone for listening to the first episode of Season 2 of This Is Why We Stand. There are plenty more on the way, so keep on listening, and thank you everyone. Joe Archino here with This Is Why We Stand.